What's going on, guys? This is Rob. I have a cold, so you're gonna have to bear with me, but we are back with Ghostrider. Now, we're gonna get the most powerful Ghostrider that you've ever seen at the end of this comic, and it is amazing. So what this does is this initially picks up in the aftermath of the fight between Ghostrider and Wolverine. You'll always find that video down in the description. But basically, some poor guy at the bar, his legs were chopped off, and so he ends up being possessed by a demon, and he goes forward as a new villain called Exhaust. He's not really important, pops up here and there, but you don't need to worry about him too much. The big caveat to all this is that Johnny Blaze is finally caught up to by Talia Warroad. Now remember, Talia Warroad is basically working with the FBI, and that's one of the things to know about the Ghostrider comics, that in a lot of ways, they're kind of in their own world, right? Ghostrider, Doctor Strange, things like that. The magic and mystic part of Marvel is just kind of its own little world over there. But Talia Warroad has been tracking Johnny Blaze down to try to understand why all of this crazy demonic stuff has been taking place across the world. Now, we as the reader know that everything's kind of gone into chaos because the demons got a hold of Johnny Blaze and basically kept the Ghostrider at bay, meaning that the Ghostrider never manifested, which allowed all these demons to just kind of permeate the country and do pretty much whatever they wanted to do. But now that Wolverine cut the demon out of Johnny Blaze's head in one of the most gruesome displays ever, the Ghostrider's back in full form, and he is literally on a warpath. And so once Talia Warroad starts to realize what's going on, she comes to the realization that the person that's seemingly behind this giant orchestration of events, right, where all these demons are popping up, is Blackheart, right? Now, Blackheart is basically the son of Mephisto in Marvel Comics. What's so funny about this is that Mephisto's always off doing his own thing, and by and large, doesn't really care about what it is that Blackheart does, mostly because if things get too far off track, Mephisto can just snatch him back to his own realm and effectively call it a day. But once Johnny Blaze wakes up and he realizes that Talia is there, her question for him is, do you want to help the FBI? Now, the reality about all this is that they're operating under the radar, right? Like, the FBI does not know that Talia is working with Ghostrider, who's the very person she's supposed to be going after. But once she starts to realize there's a much bigger game afoot than simply just Ghostrider running around doing stuff, it's one of those things where it's, I need to ally myself with this guy in order to save the day. Otherwise, it's going to be game over for basically everybody. Now, here's where things get a little bit murky, because while that's going on, we're still dealing with the death of Alabaster and basically Zeb. Now, for those of you guys who don't know who they are, that's fine. We don't really know either. They were introduced relatively recently in Marvel Comics. They're part of the Council of Night Magicians. They're super ambiguous. We know nothing about these guys, so we're kind of learning about them as we go through. So I'm sorry, I can't really provide you any answers there because there are none. Now, eventually, Talia and Johnny Blaze end up reaching their destination, which is Chicago. And as soon as they get there, the Ghostrider starts freaking out. It doesn't immediately take over, but one of the things to remember is that Johnny Blaze has been disconnected with the Ghostrider for so long. With the two of them being reconnected again, there's still a kind of harmony that has to be achieved there, in the sense that the Ghostrider is almost kind of like a demonic barometer, right? So whenever there's just like demons within a reasonable vicinity, the Ghostrider will basically start to manifest, kind of alerting Johnny Blaze to what's going on, and then punishment ensues, and then the Ghostrider goes away and Johnny Blaze comes back, and that's usually it. But with Johnny Blaze somewhat being out of phase with the Ghostrider, while it doesn't full-on manifest, it does allow him to see what is basically the spiritual world, things that he wouldn't normally be able to see with his own eyes. The other part of this is he says, this place, right, Chicago, this place is sick, which we know, right, because it's Chicago. A perfect example of this is that they basically make their way towards a church, because as the Ghostrider starts to manifest and things start to pop off, that Talia tries to reason with it, and for the most part she's successful, which is actually kind of an achievement in and of itself. Anybody who knows anything about the Ghostrider in Marvel Comics knows when the Ghostrider manifests and comes for you, there's no bargaining with this thing, right? You get the penance stare, you get to be tortured, and then your soul gets sent to hell, and that's basically it, right? There's no bargaining with this guy. But Talia actually makes this great case where she says, I get that you're here because of sins and punishment and all that kind of stuff, but there's something much bigger going on here. Let me work with Johnny and we will get this problem solved, and we will send you after whoever it is, and you can have all the punishment and all that kind of stuff that you want. And the Ghostrider ultimately just kind of recedes and lets Johnny Blaze come back. It agrees with Talia Warroad and lets the two of them continue on. But this whole thing brings them to a church, which really makes you ask the question, what could possibly be going on in a place of worship that the ghostwriter would manifest outside of the fact that, like, there's so much sin, right? It's the Catholic Church, so I guess it makes perfect sense. But the thing here is, once they get inside, this place is a massacre. People have just been sacrificed inside this place. I mean, it's gruesome. So no wonder the ghostwriter led them here, because it really is just all demons who are engaging in all this stuff. And so as they make their way down into the catacombs of this building, there's just like this crazed homeless man who keeps babbling on about how they have to pay. And then he dumps out a cup full of teeth and starts swatting at him with a knife, right? So pretty typical for an evening in Chicago. But they end up basically overcoming this guy, and then, like, he gets hit by a subway train. But when they see this train, what they realize is the train is filled with people, right? Like, all throughout the city of Chicago, folks have just come up missing. And there really isn't any rhyme or reason, right? It's not as though it's only vagrants who have been taken, right? Homeless people. That is basically people from all walks of life. The ultra rich, the guy who's a single father of 4, right? Just all kinds of things, all kinds of folks. And so when this happens, the ghostwriter manifests, throws his chain onto the subway train, and hitches a ride. Now, what you're gonna see here in a second is gonna be one of the most epic things ever that I think I've ever seen in a ghostwriter comic, because it's pretty dope. Now, Exhaust shows up, and then he basically kind of torments Talia Warroad for a little bit. We'll talk about them here in a minute, because it's not really important right now. What is important is, once the subway train gets to its final destination, you basically have all these demons here who are just feeding on people, quite literally, right? Like, just eating these folks. And that's the thing to understand about what's going on in the Ghostwriter comics right now. That with the Ghostwriter being gone and effectively never dealing with any demons who had escaped hell, there was no one to keep this kind of thing from happening. But demons operate underground. They operate under the radar, so that nobody is the wiser to the fact that they exist. And by people just kind of going missing casually on back roads and things like that, there's no reason for the Avengers to get involved. The X-Men wouldn't care, because it's not mutants who are being attacked. So that would basically be it. It all comes down to the Ghostwriter to figure it out. And so this dude just comes riding up on the scene, and it's not just like Ghostwriter with like a flaming chain, it's Ghostwriter with a flaming chainsaw, right? And literally just starts attacking all these guys. And then he takes the chainsaw, he attaches it to his chain, so he's literally got this flaming chainsaw, and he's just spinning it around in circles over his head. It's one of the most epic things that I think I've ever seen. It's so cool. It's one of the reasons why I love the current Ghostwriter run, because it's a return to form to like the old Ghostwriter stories. But some of these demons decide they want to take a shot at the champ, right? Come running up on this guy, and he helps them finish with all their living. And that's basically it. I mean, just spinning a chainsaw that's flaming around his head, right? I mean, you'd think that would just ward people off and make them believe they don't want to have anything to do with anything. But the bigger part of what's going on here, and this is what's so cool, what's really big about what's going on here is the full-on scheme that Blackheart has. One of the things to know is that Blackheart's motivations are not that dissimilar from Mephisto. Mephisto is a ridiculously powerful being in Marvel Comics. He is almost unrivaled in his own realm, to the point that you'd be a fool, regardless of your power level, minus Franklin Richards, to show up there and try to fight him within the realm of hell. But the idea behind Mephisto is he always makes bargains with people. There's always a catch, but whenever you make a bargain with Mephisto, once that bargain is satisfied, your soul goes to hell. A good example of this is Dr. Doom's mom. Blackheart is not that dissimilar, but what he's been doing here is his mindset is basically, Mephisto can have hell. He can have hell all, for however long he wants. That's his thing. What I want to do is I want to conquer the world, because of what use is that realm if there's nobody to go there, right? Like, all their souls belong to me. And so what he's doing is literally spreading this kind of demonic plague throughout the entirety of the United States, with a sight set on the rest of the world, starting at people in the political level and so on and so forth, working its way down from there. And the reason why is because with people who have positions of power, they create laws, they decide moral compasses, and so on. So if they create this circumstance where it's just kind of do whatever you want to, there's no limits, right? Just have fun and engage in whatever actions you want to, people will bend to their base desires, and that will lead to them becoming sinful. So that's why people like cardinals are being targeted, and so on and so forth. It's one of the things to keep in mind about Marvel is that there isn't really a Judeo-Christian philosophy here. You find that in DC. There isn't really like a Jesus who's watching all this stuff. I mean, technically Jesus does exist, but there is not really a Jesus watching all this stuff and is like, hearken alas, let's get involved because this is a problem, right? Like, that doesn't really exist there. But it's it's one of those cool things where even those individuals who wouldn't normally partake in this would be infected by a demonic presence, because what's happening is that some of these farmers out there, for example, are kidnapping people, chopping them up, and then feeding them to their pigs, and their pigs in turn are being slaughtered and then fed to people, to say nothing of the human remains that are being ground up and being fed to people as well. It's pretty gruesome. It's pretty dark, but it's also an incredibly efficient way to come out on top. And so, referencing back to Zeb and the Council of Night Magicians, while they are still incredibly ambiguous, we know they do stand against Blackheart. We don't know if they really ally themselves with Johnny Blaze per se, but this is enough of a concern that they ultimately get involved. Now, Zeb is able to challenge Blackheart to a degree, but this guy's power is immense. He's not an easily defeatable foe. Is he as powerful as Mephisto? No, not a chance, but he is still incredibly capable in his own right. So the best that Zeb can really do here is keep this guy at bay, right? Hold this guy off until such a time that the Ghostrider can sense the presence of Blackheart, arrive on the scene, and then effectively send him back to hell. And that's exactly what happens. That what takes place here is that with Talia Warroad having been attacked by Exhaust, she's overtaken by him for a moment, kind of turned into a servant of sorts. Johnny Blaze, to not put too fine a point on it, is able to basically use the power of friendship to bring her back. And I'm not even joking, that's really what this is. He's like, you're my partner, you're my friend. And then she snaps back to normal, and then they're able to overcome Exhaust, and then that's kind of it. So one of the weak points in the story that I'm not overly fond of, but it does allow them the time they need for the Ghostrider to sense the presence of Blackheart through the assistance of Zeb, and then ride onto the scene. Now, the funny thing about this, and this is one of the things a lot of people get wrong when it comes to Ghostrider, is they usually expect this kind of like great big huge massive fight between Ghostrider and some kind of like demonic entity. And that has happened. It has been cool when it did happen, but it doesn't happen often. In the case of Blackheart, there's no need for all that. Literally, the Ghostrider shows up here and it's just like game over, right? Like donezo. And basically opens a portal to hell and sends him back. And that's effectively it. Now, it's easy to scoff at that, and it's easy to see that as just what's basically a giant waste, but it's not. Because if you see it for what it is, it shows you how powerful the Ghostrider is, right? That for the most part, barring someone like Mephisto, and even then it's still possible, there aren't very many people that can withstand the power of the Ghostrider. And this is him just teleporting a guy back to hell, to say nothing of the penance stare, which has been used on cosmic entities like Galactus, I believe, headcanon, so don't take that as an absolute truth, but I want to say that's happened, right? But it's just that thing where his character is just on a whole new level. And so where it looks like the day is effectively saved, this is where we get to the portion where I tell you that we end up getting the most powerful Ghostrider to ever exist. Because what happens is, behind the scenes and all of this, we transition to what's basically a kind of experiment that's being conducted out there by these folks influenced by this demonic presence. And what they're doing is they're trying to harness demonic energy, specifically the power of the Ghostrider. And the way they're doing this is they have a test subject named Danny Ketch. Now, for anybody who knows anything about the Ghostrider mythos, they'll tell you right now, man, when you think of Ghostrider, you're not thinking of Johnny Blaze, you're thinking of Danny Ketch. And this guy is on a whole nother level of overpowered. I mean, this guy is nuts. This guy's healing factor is next level. This guy's penance stare is next level. This guy, in a reasonable comic, this guy would dominate Johnny Blaze, and it wouldn't even be funny. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Make sure you guys click this link so you can get caught up on all the Ghostrider videos we've done so far, and I will catch you all later. Peace.